And welcome to the Neo Renaissance and to space weather, folks. Starting out the broadcast by looking at our local yellow dwarf on 193 angstroms. We see a giant Earth-facing coronal hole. It looks like it might be a little bit North Pole associated, stretching all the way down past the equator, well into the south. Very well defined, increasing earthquake risk, and looking for magnetic connections with that. Now, there is some plasma on the way from that coronal hole. We're expecting that in 1 to 2 days. And here's the view in 304 angstroms. We're going to put up some features today that we haven't looked at in a while, as there's always interesting data if you know what to look for, folks. The filament that was down here in the south, I'm not sure where that went, and I'm not seeing it. But here's a view from stereo A. And we actually do see some activity popping off here south of the equator. It's very far south, and there's some northerly activity there also. So cycle 25 activity all over the place, folks, and that's a good thing. Also 10.7 centimeter radio flux back up to 66, and let's look at cosmic rays. Let's just check and see what the levels of cosmic rays are currently. Here's a Patatis neutron monitor, and there's Barentsburg. Next, we're going to look at Athens. I did see a spike in Mexico City yesterday, but let's go down the whole list. There we see in Athens we see a spike at the Athens monitor on the 21st. Anyway, there's 30 days of activity there. Next, we'll look at Mexico City. And by the way, there are links to this cosmic ray site. There we see a cosmic ray spike at Mexico City yesterday. And by the way, this data is archived and it is accessible. If you want to look at older data, just put in a different year, for instance, press submit. It's going to look all jumbled up, but it's at least going to show you the data from 2005 until current. I think you got to change the resolution to 1 day. There we go. That should work. And there's the cosmic ray scenario at Mexico City since 2005. And as you can see, it's not the highest it's ever been at Mexico City. Please leave a comment if you've looked at the actual data. Here's Moscow. Moscow does appear to have a larger range, and there's 30 days of data at the Moscow neutron monitor. And lastly, let's look at Oulu. That's Oulu, Finland, as well as 2 Antarctican monitors. There's the scenario at Oulu. Please note that 2010 had higher cosmic ray flux there. And here's DOMC Antarctica. And there's DOMB Antarctica. Again, links to cosmic ray sites page are in the description below the video. Let's talk about the thermosphere. Now, the last solar minimum featured a colder thermosphere than the one that we currently see. There's the thermosphere index. This is available at spaceweather.com. Just scroll down right on the left side. You can click and look at this yourself, but it's quite clear that at the solar minimum between 23 and 24, the thermosphere was colder than it is now. I would also note that the highest level ever measured in the thermosphere, the only time it was ever measured as, quote, hot, end quote, was in 1958, when the solar output was the highest solar output ever measured. Probably not a coincidence. What do you think? Let's talk about morale. YouTube does absolutely nothing to boost our
morale.
In fact, companies like Google and YouTube do nothing but reduce our
morale.
So let's talk about morale for a minute. When I see somebody, for instance at work, when I see somebody, I don't ask them how they're doing. I ask them what's good. And why do I do that? Well, there's a distinct reason for it. It's because if you ask somebody how they're doing and they're doing lousy, not only are they going to remember how lousy they're doing, they're going to tell you about it, and they're going to reinforce their lousiness. If you ask them what's good instead, now if you ask me what's good right now, I'd probably say cheesesteaks. But I've got a whole list of things that I consider good, like actual data, for instance, and useful space weather videos, right? I consider these things good. And when you ask somebody what's good, if they take the question seriously and don't think that it's just verbal nonsense, they might actually remember something that they consider good. They might tell you about it. They might feel better, and everybody's morale might get boosted. Some consider it a sales technique. If you're on a sales call, don't ask your potential client how they're doing. Again, because if they're doing badly, not only will they remember, they'll tell you. Have you become a patron? Check out our patreon.com/smAsho if you'd like information before everybody else in the world. And yes, we come out with information about cosmic rays, not to mention coronal mass ejections, before NOAA and NASA do. The last 3 coronal mass ejections were covered on this channel before anybody else on the entire internet. Don't believe me? Go watch our older videos. youtube.com/smAsho. And by the way, we're also on BitChute and Gab and Minds and all kinds of other sites like Twitter. Let's go back to data. There's the solar X-ray flux measured by the GOES 14 and 15, and it's totally flatlined. Next, we'll move on to the real-time solar wind, which is super solar minimum condition-ish. Again, not as solar minimum as it's been, as at least the 10.7 centimeter radial flux is back up to 66, and we see activity in the form of plages. Still no sunspots, but some plages. And we don't see any kind of magnetic connection with the coronal hole. Keep in mind that could happen at any moment, as magnetic environments can change with zero warning. Solar wind density 1.8 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed 355 kilometers a second. And there's the data from ACE. We do see missing data on both spacecraft, the Discover and the ACE, around 1800 UT last night. Geospace magnetosphere movies are next, and it is smooth sailing in this weak magnetosphere. So nothing to really report on there. We'll let the movie play for 4 hours of data. And welcome to the data archiving section. If this bores you, go get yourself a beverage, have a pee break, whatever you got to do. We're moving on to ground magnetic perturbations, and there aren't very many perturbations. And when we say perturbations, we're talking about delta B, changes in the Earth's B field. I'm going to just let that play through to show you the thousands of ground magnetometers that are not hiding data from you or anybody else, showing us that there's really not a lot of perturbations going on. And as far as the position on the heliospheric current sheet, it's pretty steady yet. We're looking at another day or so. Before we look at any of that, though, let's look at these sprites over Oklahoma. Check it out. This one taken on the 21st by Paul Smith in Edmond, Oklahoma. Well done, Paul Smith. Here's another image. These are available at spaceweather.com. And I would cite solar activity, while still solar minimum-ish, not as solar minimum-ish as it was a day or two ago, where it was 64 solar flux units in the 10.7 centimeter radial flux. And by the way, Canada's been measuring this feature of solar output, a measure of the outer corona, since 1947. Here's the GOES magnetometer data, and it's looking pretty smooth. No surprises there. Here's the Gong 2 data, looking at the top view ecliptic plane field plot. And this data is 1 hour, 44 minutes old, and we're pretty steadily on the green portion there. That is the North Pole charged portion of the current sheet. And I would say probably about 36 hours before the polarity crossing into the South Pole oriented portion shown on this data set in red. KP index at 0, which is the kind of thing that creates cosmic ray human health alerts, as it's been only at 1 or 0 for the entire past 24 hours. Electron flux is quite low, and we've been seeing a low electron flux. It's pretty much a shortage overall, folks. Relativistic electrons also quite low. No charging hazards around the planet. Your satellites are looking pretty safe. Here's the F2 ionosphere map. I should say the ionosphere map, as it includes the F layer, which is shown in red, by the way. The F2 layer doesn't exist at nighttime over certain portions of the planet. We're not going to get into atmospheric layers on today's video. But the ionosphere is looking pretty discharged, both on the sun side and on the night side. Here's the earthquake rundown, speaking of the ionosphere. Let's get through it as quickly as possible here. We see a deep quake at Indonesia starting out the list. This one taking place at 10:29 UT. It's currently 4:21 AM. Do you know where your earthquakes are? Well, here's the last 24 of them. Next on the list, coming in about half an hour later, is a 4.9 at Tonga. Followed at 13:13, not Mockingbird Lane, 13:13 UTC, a 4.8 at Indonesia. Followed by a 4.4 at China. 4.6 at Vanuatu is next, that one coming in at 14:03. Next we see a 4.6 at Ecuador. Another quake in western South America. No surprise there, as they've been seeing an influx of deep quakes, especially around the central western portion, like the Atacama Desert, that area. 4.5 at the Philippines is next on the list, that one coming in at 18:45 UT. One of the larger quakes of the past 24 is this 5.4. In fact, that might be the largest. That one at Indonesia, followed by a 5.1 right in the same place. Looks like an aftershock to me. What do you think? Here's a 4.9 at Japan. This one at 102 kilometers depth. Here's a 5.1 in Indonesia as the magnitude 7 earthquake drought continues, folks. Another 5.1 aftershock in that same location. So a little earthquake swarm there of 5 magnitude quakes in Indonesia. Here's a 4.5 coming in at 22:04 UT. Followed only 7 minutes later by a 5.1 well to its west. Also Indonesia. Quite an archipelago that Indonesia is. Here's a 4.6 in Indonesia, in the same location as that influx of 5+ magnitude quakes. 5.1 is next on the list, this one coming in at 22:54. So a bunch of quakes all happening during that 22-hour period. Followed by a 4.6 really far north in Canada. Let's take a look at that one. And there's a location of that one out in Baffin Bay. And let's go back to the list. Are you familiar with Junkware? Are you unsatisfied with the government use of your funds, your taxpayer dollars? Please leave a comment. Next on the list is a 4.4 at Mexico. This one coming in at 23:25, just before midnight UTC. Next is a 4.9. About an hour later, another aftershock at Indonesia. Here's a 4.7 at Japan. And that island, well-built structures would probably shrug off that 4.7 and have a cocktail. Here's a 5.4 at Indonesia. Back to that same location again, as a spout of earthquakes kicks off right there. Let's zoom in. And there's a location of that swarm of quakes. We'll zoom out just to give you a visual. Whole bunch of quakes coming off in that same spot. Moving on to some more data. Going to look at the windy.com pressure maps. And there's the current state of affairs. Starting this run out at 8 o'clock Zulu Universal Time. And we'll just let that advance about 24 hours. Stay tuned, folks. Don't get bored, as there is still plenty of interesting stuff to cover. And thanks, Smash Team, viewers, new subscribers, etc. Dear Neil Thompson, we hope you had a delightful birthday. And there's where the pressure will be in about 28 hours from the making of this video. Next, we'll take a look at volcanodiscovery.com and see what's been happening. And Shivaluch has had an uptick as it's producing a 36,000-foot ash plume and producing explosive activity close to the stratospheric boundary there, as that is very far north, and it's approaching wintertime in the northern hemisphere. Please leave a comment if you've seen a purple sunrise or sunset. Next on the list is Mount Aso, producing a 6,000-foot plume. Tucono exploding, 7,000-foot plume there. Ravenador exploding, 15,000-foot plume there. Sabancaya exploding, 26,000-foot plume there. Laguna Jayucota in northern Chile is on the list. Let's read the report. Looks like a report was put in for an eruption. They're not able to see it in the satellite imagery. So there is an advisory for Laguna Jayucota. Like the name of that one. Copahu also exploding, producing a 14,000-foot ash plume, and Nevados de Chilean exploding. Please do not do a forward roll over Nevados de Chilean. At least try a handspring or something, as you will not make it. Here's where stuff is in the solar system. There's where it'll be in 1 week, and check out theplanetstoday.com if you want to look this up for yourself. Here's where stuff is above my head, and check out in-the-sky.org if you want to make yourself a sky map. We are not paid to say that, by the way. Lightningmaps.org could save your gear. So check that out the next time you hear lightning. And it looks like they're hearing some in France. And yes, it will show you the sonic waves. Airport de Bezerco de Caralangajoc. Thunder's rolling in. Beziers. Thunder's rolling in, Beziers. I'm not an expert on European weather, folks, but lightningmaps.org is a good time. And the next time you hear thunder, check it out. You won't regret it. Here's the Weather Underground radar animation, I think. There it is. Snow continues to fall across the northern Rockies, South Dakota, a little bit in Minnesota there along Lake Superior. Jet stream flow is making for some cold days, folks. And there's the water vapor map, courtesy NASA GOES interactive weather satellites. And we've got mostly dry air all the way from southern New Mexico and Arizona all the way up to New Hampshire there. And let's take a look at this convergence over Wyoming. And there's the scenario there. We've got some dry air mixed in there. And not a lot to report on as far as that goes. Let's look at one more view, though. And over off the coast of Florida, we do see some moisture kicking up there. Perhaps rapid cloud nucleation is occurring, as we have a mostly anticyclonic system there associated with that dry air. You can see a somewhat of a clockwise rotation, while that low tries to rotate counterclockwise. And here's the jet streams of the Western world. As we look at it daily, we have an extreme split in the jet stream there around Nova Scotia. And we've got some jet stream moving backwards here out in the South Atlantic. not to mention some backwards jet streams over northern Africa. Let's look at the eastern world. And there are the eastern jets. Still major disparities in the formation of the jet stream, as well as very powerful jets in the south. Let's see how coherent it is. There's a view from Antarctica. And there's the North Geographic Polar View. It's starting to actually get a little coherent in the Northern Hemisphere as convective forces canceled out the jet stream all summer long. And we've graduated to the that is censored and that is a sinkhole section where we talk about whatever we want. Next on the list is asking our viewers if you've decided to like and subscribe. Thanks, new subscribers. We have hundreds of space weather videos, by the way. We've been doing it every day for I don't even know how long. And have you seen Electric View? Have you subscribed? This channel, hosted by Neil Thompson, features a video from Sunday where we talked about cosmology for 2.5 hours.
How long? And that's going to be like
a spray.
Right? Yeah, it's just staying there, and so there's this like it has all these weird properties. It can transmit electromagnetism.
Anyway, there's a teaser. Go watch the video from Electric View. We'll leave links in the description once I put them there, which I haven't done yet. Also, if you want to see the whiteboard that we used that day, drawings of the Sun-Earth magnetic connection, crude images of a Birkeland current, what a cosmic ray sheet looks like, Cygnus X3, M87, very high detailed images of the Earth's magnetohydrodynamics. So check that out if you like. And support the channel by being a patron, as YouTube pays us precisely $0 for these videos, throttles our content, messes with our thumbnails, our titles, our descriptions, and pretty much ensures that we are as shadow banned as Tulsi Gabbard. Also, if you're not into Patreon, you can donate to the channel via PayPal. You can also purchase Hemp Lucid CBD products via the affiliate links. We've got a spaced out campaign specifically formulated for our spaced out viewers. But the main way is through Patreon. Thanks, patrons. This is why we give you the information before everybody else. Cheers. There's going to be more exclusive content coming all the time. So keep in mind, the $1 Patreon level is going to evaporate on Halloween, making for a scary day for those who are not in at the $9.99 level. Let's talk about Junkware while we're talking about how YouTube doesn't pay us anything for these videos, despite showing you all advertisements. And thanks again, viewers. Turns out that home builders are dumping Google's Junkware. And this time we're talking about junk hardware. Now, Google is the leading provider of junkware across the internet. Google owns about 60% of the world's servers. And so a proportional amount of web traffic goes through those servers. And they're being sued for electioneering by Tulsi Gabbard's presidential campaign right now and exposed on every possible front. Turns out home builders have stopped installing their junkware also. You know why? Because of planned obsolescence. Now, Google makes smartphones, smart phones. I got to put it in quote because there's nothing smart about a Google smartphone. And all of these devices, as Apple is well known for, have planned obsolescence. Would you like to put planned obsolete devices into your home? Well, home installers don't like it because guess what? When these things stop working, because they're designed that way, they have to honor their warranties. And construction guys don't particularly like reinstalling entire Nest systems in people's houses. It tends to hurt their bottom line, and so they've stopped installing this junk, garbage, spyware in people's homes. Links to this article also from Extreme Tech. Let's talk about Magnetohydrodynamics. I'm not going to talk about it very long except to say this article from Scholarpedia, a website I was not even aware of until this morning. Anyway, magnetohydrodynamics is becoming a more and more important branch of science. So read up on it if you're not already aware. There's an article coming out. It's going to be all over the internet today. It's just a computer simulation, folks, but it's producing a surprise that magnetic reconnection is associated with things like solar flares and the solar wind and so on. So check out this article also. Let me scroll through it slowly, and then all you folks that don't want to click on anything can just read the article by pausing this video. I don't know if you've been watching all of our videos, but you're probably aware that laser beams can alter ionization pathways in plasma. And of course, lightning can be tracked down a laser beam and so on. It's kind of the lightning rod of the future. Anyway, read the article if you're interested in magnetohydrodynamics, as it is a more and more important part of science, real science, as opposed to nonsense. The pros and cons of going organic, and guess what? There are no cons, because the cons are all based on the fact that it's going to increase your carbon footprint. Anyway, links to this article also, and considering the fact that I don't believe that carbon dioxide has anything to do with the Earth's temperature, except that 800 years after the Earth's temperature goes up, carbon dioxide goes up. But it's certainly not the Earth's temperature control knob, and so go organic. It's got environmental benefits, including healthier soils, reduced pollution, and enhanced biodiversity. A global switch to it would not help offset global warming, agricultural researchers who know nothing about atmospheric science, much less heat latency, say. Anyway, this will encourage you to do things like crop rotation and do all kinds of normal farming practices that everybody's supposed to be doing anyway. Links to the article below the video. And regarding carbon footprints, we implore you to go in your backyard and burn a tire, increasing your carbon footprint, increasing crop yields, and for that we thank you, as it's not warming the planet. There's zero data indicating that carbon dioxide warms the planet for the 90,000th time. Let's talk about a new X-ray telescope that's just returning images, eRosita, and we've got some striking images here. This one is of some nebula. I don't know, it's got a catchy name. It's Galaxy Cluster A3391 and A3395. Shout out Gareth. Oh, man. Let's talk about supernova 1987A, which is this blue blob here. Not this bright point in the center, but this blue blob that's considered a supernova remnant in the Large Magellanic Cloud. So this thing's got 7 X-ray telescopes on it, and we'll be interested to see the rest of the output from this object, eRosita. Links to this article also below the video. If you're interested in looking up the transients from supernova remnant 1987A, just go to the Neil Gorell Swift-Bat Telescope Observatory, type in hit Control F, type 1987, and there you go. There are the transients from that. And it's not particularly exciting. Let me show you something that does have exciting transients. A real cosmic ray source, as opposed to a fake, phony, lying cosmic ray source, Cygnus X3. Now this high mass X-ray binary is one of my favorite candidates for a cosmic ray point source. And while it's not technically proven as far as I know, it's a cosmic ray point source. Anyway, there are the transients from that. We do see some very dense transients about 5 days ago there. But you notice that this has a significant periodicity. It's fairly reliable. And just a little side note, the highest transient shown here occurred in 2009 at the last solar minimum, but not at this solar minimum. Please leave a comment if that makes sense. And thanks again, Smash Team. Stay tuned for a couple of bonus features. First of all, we're going to show you the graph from Solon.info. But before we do that, we're going to talk about the B word, as some Democrat from Massachusetts who should be fired. He should be fired, and there should be a recall election for putting up such ridiculous legislation. Even if it didn't fly in the face of the First Amendment, the idea that you could make a law like this is complete nonsense. So, hey, Daniel Hunt, not to be confused with his brother Mike Hunt, Quit your job and go move to a cave and become a hermit, please, because this is total nonsense, and you do not deserve to be an elected official producing legislation like this. A person who uses the word "bleh" directed at another person to accost, annoy, degrade, demean, or demean the other person shall be considered a disorderly person. Now, they have directly written into the law the intentions of the utterer of a word. How are they going to be able to prove in court your intentions were to accost, annoy, degrade, or demean the other person? It's complete nonsense. Daniel Hunt, we implore you to quit your job and stop sucking money out of taxpayer coffers. There are more important things to spend the money on than your pathetic, undeserved salary. Move to a cave, get off the internet, eat rocks for the rest of your life, Daniel Hunt. You dum-dum. Only a Democrat could come up with such legislation. Solar terrestrial activity. We're looking at solon.info, and we've got links to this also. Again, this is a great graph showing the solar minimum as the 10.7 centimeter radio flux went all the way down to 64 for a minute, now back up to 66. And stay tuned for one, count 'em, bonus feature. And we're just going to tune into the local yellow dwarf here. We're looking at about 8 hours of today's solar activity in 335 angstroms. Do a zoom in of the north and a zoom in of the south, and then exit as if we robbed a bank. There's the northern portion of the solar disk in 335 angstroms. There's a southern portion. I would note that bright region right in the middle there, south of that coronal hole. Looks like it's degraded a little bit. It was a cycle 25 plage as yesterday. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We are out. So please share on your social media. Please press like and subscribe. Please become a patron and help to support the channel, increasing the likelihood that these videos will continue to exist. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, when you're staring at the sun, don't drink it. If you drink, stare at the sun anyway. Just don't drive. And were you aware that it'll never be now again? Since it'll never be now again, may that solar wind be at your back and that atherosclerosis absent from your veins.